Episode 13 starts on a computer screen, over which we hear Pietro's tired voice. "I can't see any other explanation." We pull out to find him, Ironwood, and Penny talking in Pietro's office on Atlas. Ironwood is leaning over Pietro's shoulder, trying to parse out the screen, while Penny waits patiently off to the side. With a groan, James rubs at his brow and walks away from the console. After Beacon we had everything reinforced, how did we not catch this? Pietro keeps his eyes on the computer and plugs away at the keyboard. "Our focus was external, not internal. Theoretically, they're one and the same." Clicking a definitive key, the data on screen vanishes and a series of data port schematics appear. "Someone with the access to the hardware could spoof a program and send messages out untraced. But with how it's coded, it shouldn't be possible to gain more than surface-level access to the city's subsystem, no matter how good they are. Unless..." Grimacing, Ironwood scratches at his beard. "Unless they had direct access to a core function. In other words, a mole." Pietro smiles at Ironwood proudly, holding up a finger to add. "Possible, yes, but there are other ways. A shifting target already inside is just as valid a theory." With another few keystrokes, he pulls up a map of a massive server node within Atlas, inside of which rest dozen upon dozens of red dots. "They're smart and moving around the connection point. Turns our server farm into a haystack and them into a needle with legs." Stern, the general asks, "Can you find them?" Pietro leans back in his chair and lifts his hat to rub his scalp. "Finding the footsteps was hard enough. Finding the feet they belong to, well..." Unsatisfied, Ironwood turns to the room's other occupant. "Penny?" Penny hops to attention. "At my father's request, I have already scoured the security logs. Forensic analysis indicated tampering, but we could not uncover what edits were made, nor could we restore any footage of the perpetrator." Eyes hard, James looks to Pietro. "Is there anything we can do?" Pietro turns to him. "Toward catching them? Unless we get lucky, not much, but Penny and I can plug the holes as we find them, hopefully restrict their chances of getting commands in or out, but it'll also require a change in protocol for the senior staff. I wanted to get you up to speed before we did anything." Considering the option for only a moment, James nods. "Do it." Ironwood exits Pietro's office only to almost run right into RWBY, who was lifting her hand to knock. They stare at each other before RWBY shuffles awkwardly to the side with a polite, "General?" Surprised, his eyes harden before he quickly relaxes and smiles a little more with a polite nod back. "RWBY?" As he steps past her into the hall, RWBY shuffles back from the door a little more as both Pietro and Penny are also making their ways out. RWBY perks seeing them, though the surprise is swallowed by disappointment. "Oh, are you guys going somewhere?" A glance is shared between the three before Penny blinks in alarm. Oh yes, my apologies, RWBY." In a rare moment, Penny looks genuinely anxious and conflicted. "A problem has occurred and the General has requested our assistance in the matter. I'm afraid that our hangout will have to be postponed. Again." While RWBY makes a good show of hiding her disappointment, it's impossible to miss how the energy leaves her body. Pietro looks to Ironwood, who matches it back, and the two men communicate silently on the matter before Pietro speaks up. "I don't see a reason Miss Rose couldn't join us. To help, of course." His words are more of a question, and Ironwood considers the situation before relenting. A praiser of the situation. "But RWBY." He turns to her and is very measured and serious. "This is a confidential matter and must be kept so. Am I clear? Not even your teammates can know." Worry lances across RWBY's face, but she nods back, matching his expression. It's Penny that speaks up next, and though her words are confident, there's a strained uncertainty that underlies them. "You can rest well, General. Ruby Rose is the most trustworthy huntress I know." That gets a small, calm laugh out of Ironwood. "High praise indeed." He nods to the three. "Well, get to it." They watch him walk away, and Penny places a hand on RWBY's shoulder with a kind smile. "Shall we go?" Energy begins to feed back into RWBY as she begins to walk. "So what exactly are we doing?" We cut to the rooftops of Mantle, shadows against the thin light that comes from the sun at the horizon. Thanks to the nearing solstice, it's hard to tell what's dawn and what is dusk. Clover's voice cuts over the scene, presumably audio from an earlier briefing. "We've gotten a lead on a substantial number of supplies stolen from the freighter crash a few days ago. Computers, technology, dust, weapons." Two figures hop between the roofs, and we cut closer to find Blake and Weiss keeping low and quiet as they make their way over another alley. They've been turning up on the black market, and one of our informants let slip that extremists have set up a distribution network in the brackish district of Mantle. Code markers matching possible White Fang are reported to be involved. These new factional elements have become our lead suspects in the airship crash, so this mission is top priority. The two slide to a stop in a thin layer of snow, resting against the concrete lip of a roof, Clover's voice crackling over their radios.
All teams in position. Wait for signal before commencing operation.
They peer over the lip towards an unassuming industrial building along a side street, one that lacks almost any foot traffic comparable to its neighbors. The Clover explanation from earlier concludes, saying, "They're currently set up in the old water purification center, but we know they've moved locations at least twice before. The supplies themselves are secondary. Primary focus is on apprehending these bad guys and gals." Blake and Weiss don't move, eyes trained expertly on the location. A cold wind whisks by and Blake shivers, fingers clenching into the concrete barrier. Couldn't have placed us near a heater, could they? Weiss smirks. Too noticeable with how bright they are. I thought you'd gotten used to the cold. Blake shakes her head subtly. How could anyone ever get used to this? That earns a small amused huff from Weiss. Well, you just have to be as warm and jolly as us at Legions. There's more comfortable quiet as they continue to observe until Weiss speaks. I've been meaning to ask, but are you okay? You've been distant since the freighter mission. Blake tenses subtly, but it's still enough to give her away. Weiss frowns self-consciously. Was it something I said? I know we didn't exactly see eye to eye. A cool hum comes from Blake's throat. I'd be lying if I said it didn't bother me. But you made a good point, and that's what's been bothering me more. Weiss's frown deepens. Oh, I'm sorry? Blake shakes her head. You didn't do anything wrong. None of you did. I can't wrap my mind around it. Is this what being a huntress is actually like? Shifting a bit to try and find some comfort, Weiss asks, do you want to talk about it? With a shrug, Blake rejects it. I don't know how I feel. There's a beat of silence before Weiss comments. Things really are different up here, aren't they? I hadn't considered what it'd be like for you, working with the people you fought. She goes quiet as the exact words she wants to convey fail to materialize. There's a crackle as Ciel comes over the radio and the two perk an alarm, eyes squarely on the building.
Belladonna, Schnee, your comms are open.
Their eyes widen and both faces become flush with embarrassment. Right afterwards, a pitiful whine comes through the radio from Neon.
No, Ciel, they were just getting to the good part.
Ciel's frustrated tone bleeds through as she replies,
Cat, don't start with me. Belladonna, Schnee, no chit-chatting on the job.
Both press into their earpieces with a quick, sharp, yes ma'am, before tapping the earpieces a second time to mute themselves. With a sigh, they return to focusing on the building, though the tension from earlier still lingers. Weiss exhales, her breath a cloud in the cold weather. For what it's worth, I don't like it any more than you do. Blake frowns, drawing into herself. Just drop it, Weiss. I appreciate it, but this isn't the time. Weiss scrutinizes Blake's face, clearly not satisfied with the answer, but does as she asks and stops prodding. Idly, she changes the subject. Maybe we all need a break to unwind. We never did end up taking one. That gets Blake to chuckle, if quietly. Weiss Schnee asking for a vacation? Never thought I'd see the day. Weiss raises a challenging brow. I'm still a person. Besides, the solstice is coming up. It's only natural to be thinking about that. Mention of the solstice makes Blake pause, and gradually her tentative smile fades. Maybe we really do need a break. Flynn and Neon invited Yang and me out to go clubbing that night, and Yang seemed uneasy with it. Weiss narrows her eyes in concern. Really? Did she say anything? Blake frowns. I could just tell she was uncomfortable with it. Weiss cocks her head to the side. Did you ask her about it? Earning a shrug from Blake. We've been so wrapped up in everything that I keep forgetting to ask. It seems kind of small in the grand scheme of things. Weiss grows a crooked smile. And yet, you're worried about her. That flummoxes Blake for a moment. Well, of course I am. She's like our mascot party girl if she doesn't want to party. Weiss is amused and confused in equal measure. Isn't that a little demeaning? Blake blushes and her ears fold back. No, that's not... Weiss laughs. You're allowed to be worried about her, Blake. Blake groans into her hands. I know, but if she's having a problem, I want to help her. Weiss raises a brow. I mean, did you want to go dancing? Blake averts her eyes. Not really. Gaze more pointed, Weiss asks, maybe Yang was picking up on that? She might have been trying to be polite. Blake's brows furrow tightly as she considers the words. I hadn't considered that. She ends up frowning. So, do you think she'd go if I did? Weiss shrugs. Doesn't hurt to ask. But are you sure that's something you want to do? Just for her sake? Blake nods silently, brows still tight as she thinks things over. I think it would be good for me too. After a moment, they unfurrow and she looks towards Weiss again. Speaking of, what happened with Whitley? Have you talked to him yet? Immediately, it's easy to tell Weiss's feathers are ruffled, her posture sinking. All of my calls keep getting routed to his secretary. Blake's eyes widen. He has a secretary? And Weiss shakes her head. Not the point. She sighs and leans her chin on her palm. Can't very well apologize if I can't even get through to him. I keep working up the nerve to call for nothing. Blake shrugs back. Go see him in person then? Weiss groans in frustration. Oh sure, I'll just walk into one of the most well-guarded homes on the planet and say, hello, uninvited. At this, Blake becomes even more concerned. They won't even let you back in your home? Weiss waves a demonstrative hand in the air. Daddy Dearest wasn't exactly thrilled being humiliated in the cafeteria. My clearance was revoked not even an hour after that. Blake winces in sympathy. Ouch. Weiss rolls her eyes. You can say that again. After a beat, Blake leans back, looks around the street, and irritatedly asks, We've been sitting here for like 10 minutes. When are they going to start this operation? I'm freezing my ears off. This content and the rest of the content on Celtic Phoenix is brought to you by the wonderful people supporting the channel through Patreon. For just $1 or more, you can gain access to the Tundra Discord server, where you can interact with me and a whole host of my fellow internet colleagues, such as the other members of Team Frostbite and the Team Jacked podcast. Become a part of our regular bad fanfiction nights that happen every Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time by joining our chat and adding your commentary to the reading. You can also join by becoming a member of the Celtic Phoenix YouTube channel, with the additional bonus of gaining access to a bunch of sweet emoticons during every one of our streams, such as the Team Jacked podcast, which airs every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But if either of those are too much for you, you can always subscribe to the channel, enable alerts, like this video, and share it around to all your friends. Thank you all so much for watching, and we now return you to your regularly scheduled fixing. The camera slides away from Blake and Weiss, dipping behind the roof exit of the building into a new scene. We slide up between two rows of servers that form a curved hallway, where RWBY is dutifully shadowing Penny and Pietro. We get a nice wide shot to establish the server farm radiates out from the center of the room in large rings, with the outer rings incomplete in some spaces for future expansion. RWBY is quietly taking in the grand scale of the computer system that keeps Atlas running, and bumps into Penny's back when they finally stop in the center. After a quick, embarrassed apology, the two watch Pietro access the central pylon and begin to run a program on it. Okay, he declares, turning to look at them. From here, we just need to ensure all the nodes are synced up. Penny and I will be in charge of that. RWBY blinks between them.
So I need to...
Pietro waves it off with a smile. You and Penny can begin searching. Her sensors and your young, keen eyes should be able to spot anything that seems out of sorts. RWBY blinks again, this time at the complicated series of wires and servers around them. Laughing, Pietro begins to go off in his own direction. Don't fret too much over it. If you see something that doesn't look right, point it out to Penny and she'll let you know. RWBY nods. Right. And they watch him leave, his spider chair climbing over one of the nearby server racks. Penny, facing her standard smile, wordlessly turns and begins to walk the other direction. RWBY notices this a moment later, thinks nothing of it, and stumbles after her with a casual,
Oh hey, wait up!
Keeping her head on a pivot, RWBY continues to take in the room around them as she and Penny walk through it. This place reminds me of Signal's library. I mean, I don't think it was quite this big, but it had the whole circle shelves thing. Penny looks over her shoulder as RWBY almost trips over a thick cable running along the ground. Signal? The combat school in Patch Vale? That is where you trained before Beacon? Catching her balance, RWBY's brows scrunch at Penny's phrasing. Yeah, I told you that, didn't I? It's where Uncle Crow worked before, well,
I think he said he took a vacation, but I guess he doesn't work there anymore after we left for Mistral.
Ruby puts a finger to her chin in thought. Penny rounds a corner into one of the main thoroughfares at the center of the circles, a shadow crossing over her face before it lights excitedly.
Oh yes, that is correct. You visited Mistral recently. Please, do tell me, how was it?
Rushing to stand beside Penny in the wider space of the corridor, she throws her hands in the air eagerly.
Oh, it was
Awesome! Well, except for the whole coup thing with the White Fang and, the vault.
But the rest was super cool. There were all these food shops we got to go to, and the festival was so much fun too.
Some of her enthusiasm dies recalling that night.
Man, I really wish we got to stay the whole time. We had to leave the day after all that started.
They reach a node terminal as Ruby's mood sinks further and Penny begins to type away at the keyboard. However, a light goes off in Ruby's brain and she fishes out her scroll to show Penny several pictures taken that night.
But all of us got to wear these really pretty outfits. Well, it was pretty on the others. I just kind of felt like a clumsy duck in mine.
She rubs the back of her head and Penny looks to her without ever ceasing her work. Penny's smile splits even wider as she says,
I do not see what you mean. Those images show the outfit you wore was very flattering. I believe you are just as pretty as everyone else in those photos.
Ruby blushes bashfully and waves it off.
Oh, Weiss said the same thing. You guys don't need to lie to me.
Penny turns away from the monitor, an automatic program beginning to work independently of her input. She grabs Ruby's hands and very seriously says,
Ruby, I would never lie to you. I am incapable of it.
Ruby isn't quite sure how to take that proclamation, stuck between discomfort and honest flattery.
Thanks, Penny. That means a lot.
Penny smiles just as brightly before she pulls back.
Anytime. You are my precious friend, after all.
Despite how cheery Penny's words are, some level of tension still pulls underneath them, and it's clear Ruby is starting to feel it. Without another word, Penny turns and begins to head to the next node, and Ruby watches with a mix of emotions before following after. There is silence as Ruby wrestles with something, moving several times to say something before backing down each time. Eventually, she manages to ask, voice strained,
You are my friend, right?
Penny's head twitches almost imperceptibly, and though Ruby can't see it, her smile begins to even out.
What do you mean? Of course I am your friend, Ruby.
Ruby shudders out a sigh and scratches the back of her head, conflict written all over her face.
I know, but we never get to talk anymore. We're always working together, never hanging out like we used to back at Beacon.
Penny's face has gone almost completely neutral as she replies.
With the graduation to full huntsman, free time is often a luxury. It is unfortunate that we cannot hang out like we used to, but it means we should value the time we have together all the more, does it not?
Ruby's mood only worsens, grabbing her shoulder uncomfortably. She stops walking and finally puts words to her feelings, looking at Penny's back with watery eyes.
No, it feels like you're avoiding me.
The words seem to echo across the empty row of servers, leading into a pregnant silence. Penny stops as well, unable to face Ruby as she replies.
Ruby, that is...
The words cut out, like Penny hit a hard wall. She tries again.
That is not...
Again, her voice stops.
I am...
Ruby's face begins to tremble.
I'm right, aren't I?
There is a lingering, uncomfortable silence until Penny finally manages to speak.
I am... afraid.
Surprise runs across Ruby's face.
What?
Turning to Ruby, Penny's face is strangely grief-stricken.
Ruby, I am not the Penny you think I am.
All traces of anger vanish from Ruby, replaced only with confusion and concern.
Penny, what are you saying?
Closing her eyes, Penny explains.
When I told the general I was certain you were trustworthy, I genuinely cannot remember.
Opening her eyes, she rests a hand over her chest.
My records... No, my heart tells me you are, but when I try to remember an instance where you were, I recall nothing.
She looks into Ruby's eyes, her expression very different from the Penny we know, carrying a very somber energy.
The damage Penny sustained at Beacon was irreparable. Many of the records stored on her main processing unit could not be recovered, but that could not be said of all of them. It was decided that the records, damaged as they were too invaluable a resource to lose. So they were transposed onto this unit as a reference archive after its activation.
Penny, or more accurately, This Penny looks down at her hand and flexes it. Ruby isn't sure how to process what she's hearing, looking Penny over with fresh, anxious eyes.
So, does that mean you're not my Penny?
Penny continues to stare down at her hand before replying frankly.
That is, I do not know.
Then she looks to Ruby, eyebrows drawn.
And it is that which I am afraid of.
Ruby braces herself against one of the servers, taking in the information. Eyes growing even wetter and her voice cracking, she asks,
So the Penny I know is gone?
Penny's words are surprisingly harsh in return.
How many times must I say I am unsure?
Ruby snaps back, voice wavering.
How can you be unsure?
In a surprise outburst, Penny nearly shouts.
Because...
Pausing, she reels herself back in.
I still feel like I can trust you. That I trusted you was something very important and you kept your promise. And that feeling...
Clutching a hand to her chest, she finishes out the thought.
It is precious to me. And I can't remember why.
Ruby's shuddering breaths are the only sound to fill the air. Eventually, she pushes herself off the server, wiping the tears away from her silver eyes. Wincing as she looks Penny over, a thought comes to her.
It was your secret. Who you really were.
Letting the words linger, she follows that up, asking,
You really don't remember that?
Penny stares at Ruby despondently before looking away.
I am sorry.
Ruby stares back. After a pause, she looks away.
Don't be. It's not your fault.
Nothing is said, the two lost in thought. Ruby rubs at her eyes, sniffling. Eventually, Penny asks, face pained,
Ruby, are we still friends?
She looks at Ruby earnestly, lost and despondent. Ruby matches eyes with her, equally as pained, before she steps forward and hugs Penny. Penny is surprised, but slowly lowers her arms around Ruby to reciprocate.
I'm scared too,
Ruby finally says into Penny's shoulder.
But we're still friends. Even if it's not the same.
Hearing those words, Penny closes her eyes and hugs Ruby a little bit tighter. Eventually, they separate, and Ruby rubs away the last tear from her eyes.
I wish you'd said something earlier. I'd have tried to help.
Penny smiles back sadly.
I am not sure you can.
And Ruby returns it, though hers is bolstered by some underlying optimism.
You kidding? We put our heads together, there isn't anything we can't solve.
She punctuates this by gently punching Penny's shoulder.
Just let me know if you want to talk and try and sort things out. I'm here for you. Whichever you that ends up being.
Penny's smile becomes fuller and warmer.
I would like that, Ruby. Friend, Ruby.
Ruby cringes fondly.
Just Ruby is fine.
Seemingly reinvigorated, Penny stands taller and asks,
Well, Ruby, shall we continue our mission?
Ruby is still recovering emotionally, however, and waves Penny forward.
You go on ahead. I'll catch up.
Penny gives an understanding quirk of her brows before nodding, turning, and walking on her way. Ruby slumps against one of the server banks and stares at the glass door of the one across from her. Her reflection stares back at her, and we zoom in on her silver eyes. Using the blinking server equipment behind the glass, we fade into a similar but shoddier server bank. The camera wheels out from behind the janky equipment to focus on the door to Watts' lair. It opens as both he and Tyrion step through mid-conversation. And after that, it should be easy enough to keep her under our thumb. Tyrion barks out a laugh. If you hadn't noticed, her relationship with extremities is tenuous at best. Always a disappointment, never the crown jewel. Watts gives him an unimpressed side-eye. Are you questioning Salem's decision to loop her in? Tyrion sticks a finger in Watts' face, teeth gritted. Don't play your mind games with me, dear doctor. I'm not as pliable as that pathetic wretch. I do as she commands, but I am ever vigilant for those that would impede her glory. Watts shakes his head. And she'll have her glory. Just as soon as I have mine. Slowing to a stop in the middle of the room, Watts frowns, scanning the dark chamber. Noticing something on his desk, he mutters out, That is not how I left it. There's a sound of shattering glass, and Tyrion hicks in surprise. Watts turns to find a stiletto blade to Tyrion's throat, and the small pink figure wielding it pinning his tail to the ground with her boot. Alarmed, Watts doesn't get a moment to react before a voice carries over from his desk chair.
Boy, you are not easy to find.
The chair spins around, revealing Roman, tapping his cane down between his legs to punctuate the statement. Watts' face twists into a distinct scowl. Torchwick. How? Roman stands and observes his own fingers pompously.
You've been watching us.
He taps his cane to the series of monitors flipping between different security camera feeds. Wasn't Jimmy. Had to be someone. Rolling with the punches, Watts tries to relax. So you've come here to what? Complain about the privacy violation? Tyrion, meanwhile, chafes against Neo's blade and bends his neck backwards, dipping his torso with it to look Neo in the eye with a scowl. Neo, in response, goes to stab him, only for Roman to shut that down.
Neo, we need him alive if we can help it.
Neo glances at Roman, then back to the now manic grin of Tyrion.
Ooh, defiant little spirit.
Nothing to say being ordered around like that? Neo's glare sharpens, and it's actually Watts that answers. She's mute. Tyrion snaps back. That's not an excuse! Watts rolls his eyes and returns his attention to Roman, who has stopped only a few feet away from Watts. Torchwick, what is it you want? Putting a hand to his chest, Roman smugly responds, Why, Dr. Watts!
I'm a businessman. I'm here to bargain.
We cut back to the Atlas server farm, where Ruby is now wandering the long expanse of corridors.
Penny?
She calls. She wanders a little while longer, calling Penny's name a few more times before Penny finally responds.
I am over here. Follow the sound of my voice.
Ruby does so obediently, doing her best to step over a series of cables scattered amongst the ground. The nest of cables get thicker and thicker, and eventually Ruby's sloppy footwork is too much. She trips, ripping a few of the cables from the server banks. She sits up, rubbing her head, and Penny is there a minute later, helping her to her feet.
Are you okay?
Ruby waves her off.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm more worried if I unplugged something important.
Penny observes the cluster of dislodged cables.
It does not appear you have disconnected anything vital. However, it will take some time to reattach these correctly.
Both she and Ruby crouch down and begin trying to figure out where certain cables connect, with Penny comedically instructing Ruby as they go. After a few seconds of this, however, Ruby frowns and reaches down into the bundle, finding a dislodged flash drive with a small bird motif inscribed in it that only shows up at the correct angle in the light.
Penny, is something like this normal?
Penny takes the flash drive and examines it, her face becoming serious as she flips it over in her hands. Straightening up and standing, Penny opens a call.
Father, I believe we have found the evidence we are looking for.
We cut away to Weiss, leaning against the concrete lip of the roof, toying with the ends of her friendship bracelet in her sleeve. Blake is much the same, tapping her fingers in rhythm to a nameless tune, though the cold is clearly beginning to get to her. The two jump when their radio squawk to life with Clover's voice.
It's go time. Move in, get us eyes.
Blake and Weiss fall comfortably into professional mode, and quietly navigate the remaining rooftops to arrive on top of the decrepit waterworks. On the other side of the roof, we see Neon land from a skating long jump, carrying CL on her back. Another set of huntsmen arrive at a distant corner, and the three pairs trade nods as they get to work. Using her blade and ribbon, Blake suspends herself from the roof, peering in through one of the windows. Using their own means, CL and one of the other huntsmen pair do the same, peering in different windows trying to get a good view of what's happening inside. Blake uses her scroll in its closed mode to transmit what she can see from her perch. Inside, we can make out the shuffling of bodies and the scattered illumination of a few low-intensity lights, angled to avoid shining out of any of the windows where avoidable. Blake's vision is arguably clearer than the camera's, but it's hard to get a read on what's happening thanks to everyone inside the building wearing heavy layers of cloaks and coats, leaving their movements shrouded in mystery. It's much the same for the other two scouting pairs, and even shifting windows doesn't give them a clearer image thanks to the remains of the old machinery getting in the way. The best they get is an indication that there are goods being traded at certain rudimentary stalls. Unsanctioned, but nothing overtly harmful. Blake frowns and says over the comms, "It just looks like a regular night market." In the Situation Room, Clover is overseeing the operation, scouring the footage he's being sent to him by the scout teams. Hearing Blake's words, he replies dismissively, "Now your call, Belladonna." Silently considering his options, Clover goes back on the mic. "Scout teams, reposition.
We need clearer images. Ground teams, stand by."
Blake and Weiss share a glance, and we cut around the building as Blake, CL, and the other suspended huntsmen work on opening the nearest windows as silently as possible. We cut inside, among the crowds of people shuffling around from place to place trading goods. One of the people standing guard, a bat faunus, is above the floor on an elevated gantry, and his ears twitch at the sound of the huntsman repositioning. He becomes more tense, but doesn't immediately notice anything amiss. Outside, Blake is getting a clearer view and she becomes even more cross, saying more sharply, "I don't see any contraband. It's just a regular market." The bat guard's head snaps to look up the window, seeing the shadowy form of Blake just as Clover orders over the radio,
Belladonna, shut it!
The faunus's ears hone in on the ceiling, and he notices the other huntsman in CL next. His and Blake's eyes meet for only a moment, and dread crosses her face. Panicked, the man cups his hands and yells out, "Atlas! Scramble!" The crowd shudder and shift, and suddenly the floor becomes a flurry. Stalls are collapsed, lights shut off, goods are grabbed, and every single person rushes for the nearest exit. CL hisses over the comms.
"We've been made!"
And Clover makes the call.
"All teams, move in now!"
Blake, hearing the order, kicks off the wall and swings herself through the partially opened window, smashing the glass and rolling to a stop in the middle of the hysteria. Weiss is quick to follow, jumping from the roof onto a glyph that springs her in after Blake. What follows is Blake and Weiss doing their best to arrest every person they can, employing their best non-lethal tactics to disable or trap people who are fleeing. The scene only gets more chaotic when the other huntsman squads burst in from the ground entrances, accompanied by Atlesian knights. As exits become points of conflict, many of the people begin to surrender, but a good portion still resist, and violently at that. One cloaked figure in particular lashes out at one of the background huntsmen, marring him with a brilliant green hard-light claw. Another appears from their other sleeve, and they fling it towards Blake. Blake deflects it, but the claw is on a chain, and the figure uses this to great effect to try and batter Blake back. After a brief, intense duel, where Blake is on the back foot for most of the fight using her traditional acrobatic methods, she manages to win by sheathing her blade and firing it out hilt first, getting a clear shot in on her opponent's head. The rebellious combatant is left disoriented enough for Blake to slide around and pin them to the ground. The combatant isn't one to take it lying down, however, struggling violently against Blake's grip and revealing themselves as a woman when she begins yelling, "Get off me, totalitarian pig!" Blake glowers down at the woman, forcing out the words, "And let you get away with terrorism?" The woman squirming slows to a stop, head perking in surprise, and she asks, "Belladonna?" Blinking with recognition, Blake asks back, "Time?" Fiona shrugs off her hood, craning her neck to glare confusedly up at Blake. Blake's face twists in shock, and Fiona asks in complete befuddlement, "Terrorism? What are you talking about?" Blake's face hardens, shoving Fiona into the ground. "Because you're..." She looks up to survey the situation, and with the chaos beginning to settle, Blake's face begins to fall. Among the people, children can be seen, accompanied by frightened parents. Several of the light fixtures turned out to be space heaters for a building that lacks internal heating. White Fang. Blake's grip on Fiona slackens, and Fiona wastes no time in breaking free. She rolls out from under Blake and uses her chain claw to scale the nearest wall, escaping out the window as Atlesian knights fail to apprehend her. Blake watches her go, her head scanning the room in dawning horror. She's only brought back when Weiss begins to shake her shoulder and snaps her fingers in her face. Blinking to awareness, she gives Weiss a pained expression, before croaking out, "Weiss, It's only now we see Weiss is equally alarmed by the situation around them, and she manages to say hoarsely, "I know, Blake. I know." Their radios crackle with CL's urgent voice from somewhere else in the building, where it's clear the struggle is still ongoing.
"Weiss, Blake, we could use some backup over here."
Weiss and Blake share conflicted stare as CL's voice continues to plead for reinforcements. All Blake and Weiss do is turn and stare at the cowering civilians. We cut to black as CL's cries go unanswered.